Hey guys, it's Julie B. Deep Dives again, and today I'm so excited to discuss some new From Season 3 images. From Season 3 is almost upon us, and it felt like we were getting to peek at our Christmas presents early last week, with all the amazing new images that the showrunners put out. We have to talk about this incredible set of press photos that were posted on Amazon. They were all tagged with Episode 1, Shatter, but I find it hard to believe the show could possibly pack this many events into a single episode. One thing's for sure, From Season 3 is going to start with a gigantic bang. Now, normally, the season starts with an episode containing a single day and the following episode comprising of a single night. But it looks like they might be breaking with tradition this time. I'm going to put these photos into context based on how they connect to what we've seen in the trailer and the episode descriptions, and I'll give you my predictions about what I think is going on. Let's start with the daytime images. First, we have Boyd apparently consoling Ethan about his mom Tabitha being missing, following her unexpected escape at the end of Season 2. Now, this is classic Boyd, always stepping in to comfort people who need it. And it doesn't look like it's going over so well, with Ethan giving him that side eye and the mean mug. He's growing up so fast. Next, we've got an image of Donna apparently talking to Boyd, which matches the scene from the trailer in which she tells him, Boyd, we're out of food. If this is really happening in episode 1, and it's not actually an error, our characters are going to be in a dire situation from the very beginning. The trailer showed us that their crops had all rotted. The soil had seemed to be poisoned in Season 2, so nothing was growing even before the cold weather came. So the threat of starvation, on top of the threat from the monsters this season, will lead to a sense of urgency and desperation unlike anything we've seen before. Now, this is a peculiar scene. Randall appears to be trying to steal a goat in broad daylight, while Ethan is walking behind him. I'm guessing the lack of food must be Randall's motivation, but I can't imagine what he could do with a goat. Take it on the bus with him? Seems odd. But Boyd appears to be confronting him here, flanked by a number of townspeople, including Victor and Ethan, and Ellis by his side. In the trailer, we saw Boyd giving a little speech in this location, saying, "We can still win, but the only way we go home is together." So I believe he was speaking to Randall here and the rest of the townspeople, urging them to cooperate and not give in to desperation. Now, if this really is from episode 1, Boyd is truly making the rounds in this episode. Here he is apparently having a heated conversation with Donna at Colony House. And clearly he's trying to make a point. Now, this one shows Ellis and Donna with an intense look on her face, possibly looking at Boyd as he's speaking to them. Again, I'm not entirely sure that this is definitely going to be from episode 1, but I'll come back to that later. We also see Boyd talking to Jim and Kenny at Tien Chen's house, again, really making the rounds. And they seem to be getting ready for their trek in the woods, looking for Tabitha, most likely. And once Jim and Kenny set out, apparently they find a new body of water, which looks large enough to be a lake. Could it represent the famous Lake of Tears that Ethan described in his Chromonocle story? Could be. And while they're out, they discover this mysterious old village surrounded by totems in the woods. These ominous-looking scarecrow-like things. Kenny looks so confused as he's staring at it here. In the trailer, Jim and Kenny had approached to this area and saw a totem, and Kenny actually drew his weapon. I find that odd considering that these photos don't show any apparent threat around, other than the creepy totems, unless seeing one startles him that much, I suppose. But I don't think that anyone will even be living in these cabins anymore. As you'll see in a minute, they enter the village and even camp out in one of the cabins. Whoever was living there, I think they're long gone by now. But as for the totems, if we look back at this shot of 3 totems from the Season 3 trailer, I notice that they are designed with a theme of see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. This one here has its eyelids shut tight, as you can see. This one appears to have stick arms covering where its ears would be. And this one appears to have pursed lips. So that covers the speak no evil. Now, this phrase is often used to criticize people who ignore wrongdoing due to cowardice or selfishness. But in Confucianism, the original meaning of the phrase is meant to teach prudence and the importance of avoiding evil. Now, I believe that these totems are meant to ward off evil or are warning of evil beyond this point. And that's why we have that reference to this expression here. Many of us in the fandom have speculated that these totems could serve as a more powerful form of talisman and keep the monsters out of this entire area. So it's possible they could literally ward off evil. Also, this shot is clearly from a different point in the season based on the snow on the ground, so it seems that someone revisits this area later. In the new images, Jim and Kenny see 3 distinctly different totems. This one here, which we saw in the trailer, and here from a different angle. Looks like it has its mouth sewn shut. This is a new one that we hadn't seen before. And here's another one that's overlooking the village in the background. It appears to have a large X made of sticks on the front of it, potentially warning people to stay out. In the foreground, we've got some antique wagon wheels, suggesting just how old this village is and how long people might have been getting stuck here, maybe even arriving by covered wagons centuries ago. And many of us have theorized that this place is possibly centuries old. So this is an exciting new piece of information. Then we can see Jim and Kenny have entered the village as Jim approaches a cabin here. Many fans have wondered how this village had never been discovered by our characters before. But until Boyd spent the night in the Matthews RV in Season 1, Episode 2, they weren't sure if a talisman would even work out in the woods. So Boyd just never ventured out further than he could go and get back before sundown. This new village must be farther out than that, and in a different area than the path that Boyd and Sarah took when they ventured out in Season 1. We can see evidence of just how far away this must be with this image of Jim camping out in the cabin. He even brought a lantern and what looks like Tupperware with food. And we can see here that the cabins are so old, there's only a dirt floor inside. And here we have Kenny, probably sitting to the left of Jim with their lantern in front of him. Next, we've got some new Tabitha images. This one with her apparently looking out her hospital window, horrified that she has found herself there without her family. Her face is banged up and scratched, but she seems otherwise unharmed. Apparently, she gets out of the hospital extremely fast, maybe even sneaking out. In this photo, she appears to be trying to slip out of her hospital room undetected, carefully looking around. This is actually a still from a new video which surfaced on Friday, an official MGM featurette containing new scenes and cast interview clips. I'll be covering that further in my next video. Then we see Tabitha walking down the street of what looks like a small town, which would definitely fit the profile of Camden, Maine, where I believe she's located. As I said in my previous video, given Tabitha's lack of money, she probably wouldn't be able to travel far, so I predicted that her destination would be within walking distance. These pictures suggest that. Here she is again, and an unknown person is kind of in the background, walking in her direction. Could just be a nobody, but it's interesting anyway. Now we have Tabitha here looking dazed and confused at something. And I'm pretty sure that will be the tree full of hanging bottles that we saw in the trailer. A callback to the bottle trees in Fromville, which will take her off guard, of course, seeing it out here. This house belongs to one of our new characters who was announced by the showrunners and described as a curmudgeon named Henry, who has had a rough life, according to the showrunners' announcement. The trailer showed us a scene of Henry standing next to pictures on a wall that appeared to show young Victor and young Eloise. So as many of us predicted, Henry is likely to be their father, and he's the right age range for that role, as the actor is in his 70s. But getting back to Fromville, we've got Granny Monster and Ethan opening the door for her. Ethan is a smart kid, so many of us in the fandom have assumed that Granny must have been able to mimic Tabitha's voice to trick him into opening the door. We already have had hints that the monsters can change their voices. Kenny said his dad kept taking off at night because he thought he heard his brothers outside, so they brought him to live at the clinic with Christy, which was more secure. Kenny's dad's native language is Cantonese, so the monsters were probably speaking that language to entice him outside. I mean, his family chalked it up to his dementia, but I think it was actually the monsters speaking in his native tongue. Also, the boy in white once changed his voice to match the Ankui kids' voices when Tabitha got to the lighthouse tower. So again, Granny Monster is probably changing her voice. The trailer showed Sarah coming to Ethan and Julie's aid. And new footage released on Friday showed a quick flash of the three of them running to get on the bus with Randall, who steps out of the bus to help save them. Sarah is most likely going to have a redemption arc, although in my opinion, it's impossible for her to ever truly redeem herself for what she did to Toby, Mr. Lou, and Mr. Lou's caretaker. I mean, saving Ethan, who she tried to harm as well, could be the start of an arc for her, though. Coincidentally, this moment also looks like the start of Randall's redemption arc, after kidnapping Donna in Season 2. Apparently, though, he's back to living on the bus, because people probably won't be quick to forgive and forget something like that. Now, here are some of the most intriguing images that were released. It appears that Jade is spending the night at the sheriff's station with Boyd, and he's in the doorway of the room where Frank was held after his family was killed, probably there to sleep for the night. So these two seem to be finally putting their heads together and sharing information. They're sharing some of Father Caudry's liquor as well, as you can see from the bottle on the desk. And they're definitely deep in some intense conversation. Ever since I saw them pulling the cart with the body in the Season 3 teaser, I've hoped that that image would be symbolic of these two finally working together. Because they're the two resourceful, the most intelligent people in the whole town. And they have the best shot at figuring all this out. Here's Boyd standing near this map, the second of two photos showing him near it. So maybe they're discussing the way in which everyone arrived here. It's the map with pins in it for the location of every arrival that they know of. Now this is Jade with an intense look on his face, with his much longer and wilder hair on display. He seems to be reacting to something, and it could relate to the next set of images. So most interesting of all to me are these images of Boyd and Jade wrangling animals at night in the season. And in the Season 3 trailer, we heard Boyd saying it was an ambush. So this actually might be the ambush that was referring to. In that trailer, we had seen scenes of Jade, Victor, and Tien Chen outside. Jade was frozen in place in front of the milkman creature and a dead cow, but Victor came running to his aid, about to pull him away to safety. Jeremy Ice and Fire predicted that the monsters would stage an ambush by releasing the livestock to entice people to come outside at night, and it sure looks like that's about to happen. Given the fact that the crops are all destroyed, the livestock are more vital than ever, and not just for meat. They need eggs, they need milk. So this would explain why Boyd and Jade would risk their lives to go outside at night and wrangle these animals. So here we've got Boyd with a cow, Jade with another cow, and this gorgeous image of Jade, a cow, and a sheep, which is just amazing. Kudos to the art department for that one. Unfortunately, I believe this is the same night when Tien Chen loses her life to the monsters. She was seen outside in the trailer as the monsters were closing in. And in Season 2, the description says, the town says farewell to one of their own. I predict that she goes outside to look for Ethan and Julie, but gets caught by the monsters. Boyd and Jade were shown pulling a cart in the trailer with a deceased cow in the foreground here. We can see this foot sticking out is small, like a woman's foot. And here, Boyd carries a body into the church, draped in the same cloth from the wagon. It's small enough to be an adult female, and there's a little piece of cloth showing that appears to match the mauve color of Tian Shen's sweater. This is a comparison shot of Tian Shen in her sweater, and in the right lighting, it appears to be the same color as the piece of material sticking out of the cloth. There are several other clues to back this up. In the trailer, Kenny sits alone in the diner and smashes a music box in a fit of rage. Then in the funeral scene, we can see the back of Kenny's head in the front row. But the most convincing piece of evidence for me was the altar in the church. Now, it's very hard to see when you zoom in because it gets blurry, but there is a memorial that looks identical to the one that Tian Shen has in her house for her husband, with 2 candles and a plate in between bearing a picture of the deceased person. It's too blurry to see the picture, of course, but the person does have dark hair. We've also got Ethan getting up and carrying a blanket toward the altar to pay respects, and we know he became close to Mrs. Liu while living in her house. So all the evidence points to Tian Shen, sadly leaving us by the end of episode 1. There's one scene that is conspicuously absent from this set of photos. The barn scene from this teaser that we all know so well by now. Now, one would think that this scene should also be happening by the end of episode 1. In the teaser, Boyd is wearing a yellow shirt that becomes bloody and torn near his left shoulder. We see him wearing that shirt as he and Jade pull the cart with the body in it, coming from the direction of the barn. And in the newest trailer, as I showed you before, we had an image of them pulling the cart with a deceased cow in the foreground. So it would appear that this is happening after the events of that night. Later, Boyd carries the body into the church. We can tell it's the body from the cart because it has the same cloth wrapping around it, and Boyd is wearing the same bloody shirt too. And then there's the funeral scene, where you can just about make out the body wrapped up way in the back there behind the altar. You can see the feet sticking up underneath the cloth. Based on the description for episode 2, the town says farewell to one of their own. Once again, I do believe this will be the episode in which they have the funeral, and I've explained how the evidence points to Tian Shen. So given all this information, it would appear that the barn scene should be in episode 1. But I believe that the bloody yellow shirt indicating this, it may be a misdirect. There's already so much going on in episode 1 based on the photos we've been given, and it's hard to imagine it anyway, for me, Tian Shen as the person in the barn being tortured in front of Boyd. The person chosen should be someone whose death should very personally be aimed at breaking Boyd, as the cowboy monster said that he wanted to do. The language that Boyd used is, you're so strong, I know. That doesn't sound like what he'd say to someone who's being tortured to death, in my opinion. So I always have thought that the likeliest candidate would be Fatima, with some kind of horrific C-section going on after an accelerated pregnancy. Boyd would certainly say these kinds of things to her. You're so strong, etc. And if it's his grandchild, or what he thinks is his grandchild, but could be an evil entity, if that's being taken away, it could certainly elicit this much emotion from him and potentially break him. It's entirely possible that this scene could come later in the season, and Boyd will just be wearing another of his many yellow shirts. Now, I suspect that many of these images may have been incorrectly tagged as episode 1. For instance, this image of Boyd having a confrontation with Donna may not actually be happening until episode 3. This is that shot of Donna and Ellis standing next to each other and likely looking at Boyd. The synopsis for episode 3 said Ellis and Donna try to talk Boyd out of a dangerous plan. This certainly looks like what could be happening here. So it's worth thinking about. Maybe some of this massive dump of photos, they're not all from season 3, episode 1 after all. Also, if Kenny and Jim are camping overnight in an old cabin in season 3, episode 1, then how would they get back in time for them to attend Christie's funeral? Tian Shen's funeral the very next day, where the backs of their heads are shown in the church. Now, you tell me, do you think they can fit all of this into one episode? Do you think Tian Shen or someone else will be the victim in the ambush by the monsters? Let me know what you think in the comment section. And that does it for me for this deep dive into the From Season 3, Episode 1 press images. If you liked this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. And until next time, keep on deep diving, and let's see what we can discover together.